think I'm going to get a sunburn.
No sunburns required. Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
Well, we're about 30 hours into our first trial of freeze-drying food. So one of the things that you really have to start considering when you're growing things is how you're going to preserve it. Well, pressure canning, water bath canning, freezing are all good techniques to use to preserve your food. Some of them will last longer than others. But we bought the freeze dryer for
Berries. And camping. One of the big things for us is when we go to the events that I have for my business, we try and bring as much of our food with us as we can. Now, there's one vendor that we have a soft spot for who makes the best hand pies in the world. And so we always set aside, and we plan into our schedule and our finances to eat with him a few times. But most of the food, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we make ourselves, because you could spend every dime you made practically.
Yeah, it's easy to spend $80 to $100 a day per person eating at these events. And that's not the primary reason why we go.
No. I mean, with the exception of Oscar's pies, most of the food at events it's fair food at best. At best, and at worst, it's not even fair food. So it's like, okay, no, we generally try and eat healthy, no matter where we are, and we're there to make a buck to take home with us so that we can, supplement Social Security and stuff like that. So we want to have the best quality food we can, and we've gone. We've reviewed it before that we started out bringing, frozen food, and then we moved to canned food, and now we're going to experiment with freeze-dried food, because it seems like the quality will be as good as if we made it fresh, pretty much, but we'll have the convenience of not having the weight that you have with the water when you have either canned food or frozen food, and you'll have the same advantage that you do with canned food, in the sense that, assuming you don't do anything bad to it, like get it wet.
Yeah, then it reconstitutes.
Right. You have a shelf-stable product that you're not going to lose if you decide not to use it.
And it's good for 20 to 25 years if you seal it in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, which is what we plan to do.
Right. Well, we're going to experiment. This time around, we'll probably keep out some in jars, as if we were going to use it at home, because we will. We want to make sure we test it thoroughly before we take it to an event. We don't want to be counting on something and get there and go, bleh. That's not good. But yeah, it's an experiment, and we know it's going to take some practice and some getting used to, and we've already decided that next time we wanted to try it from scratch, as if we had just made it and cooled it down and then threw it in the fridge, and then put it in the freeze dryer. But next time we'll freeze it first, because we want to see what kind of a reduction in time that will make.
Yeah, right now the biggest part of the entire process is the freeze drying, but the freezing part takes about 8 hours.
Yeah. So we have a deep freeze that has enough room in it that we can arrange to have either small containers of stuff in there or the larger trays, and have it pre-frozen so that you're not having to wait for the machine to freeze it.
Well, in the next show, we'll take you along as we try the first of our food out of the freeze dryer. So we're going to go ahead and put that portion into a glass jar tonight, put a lid on it, and then we'll go ahead and reconstitute it in the next couple of days. Now, there's a question that was asked on our channel about why don't we have livestock? And this is something that we've talked about before a little bit, but it's a good time to talk about it again, because we're going off and doing freeze drying and a bunch of other things. But we also have berries that we planted out in our yard. We are mostly doing most of our production for vegetables in our greenhouse now. And that's because rodents. And ground squirrels, also a rodent. And those nasty, nasty, nasty pocket gophers.
Yeah, they're really hard to get rid of. There are some wonderful systems that as long as you don't have plumbing in the ground, you can use. But the shock waves can break the plumbing. So
let's get on to talking about livestock. We don't have livestock.
Nope.
Why don't we have chickens, Irene?
who's going to take care of them when I'm not here?
You know, we've been here on our homestead for 18 years. A little more than 18 years, actually.
Almost 20.
And one of the issues that we have here is because we are so far out and we don't have a lot of neighbors close by, and the ones that we do have nearby have other jobs that they do.
Mm-hmm. We used to have one couple down the street from us that we could count on to take care of the garden, and they were decent gardeners, and they took it really serious. I mean, he would come over here when we were having squirrel problems, and he's like, "You don't mind if I shoot your squirrels, do you?" And I'm like, "Oh, please do." You know, if I was home, I would do it myself. And that's how serious they took care of, things. But they've been traveling too. They've had health issues that, everyone I know out here has had trouble getting someone reliable to take care of their gardens and their houses and stuff. Everyone I know. We're currently working with one family that we've used a couple of times for bits and pieces. We're going to see if we can use them some more this year. But they have a life too. So, when we talk to them about taking care of our pussycat during events and stuff like that, well, if they're not going to be gone, they can do it. But if they're going to be gone, they can't,
And
so,
the same thing goes with livestock that we would intend for food. And the problem is, I don't have a problem putting a chicken in the freezer
no.
that we raised. I don't have a problem with that. However, I don't want to go away from our property for even 2 or 3 days and come back to dead birds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're in a high predator environment. We have foxes, we have wolves, we have coyotes, we have neighbors' dogs that run loose, we have bobcats, we have mountain lions. Okay, that's pretty much other than grizzly bears and a few other things like that. That's pretty much, those are the major predators in the United States. We do also, I have only seen them once in the area here. We've had ringtails, which are in the raccoon family, which can be a predator for chickens too. We don't usually get possums here. They do farther down into some of the valleys. But, we've got most major American predators here. I have never heard of ferrets here, but I know there are ferrets in northern Arizona because they did a reintroduction plan for them a while back. Ferrets are very susceptible to the plague. So when they actually have to inoculate them to try and maintain a wild population. But there's all these critters that want to eat your critters.
Now, we've had fowl before. And we had fowl when we leased property in Virginia. We lived it was a log cabin that was converted to have a couple more rooms that were concrete block. But we had fowl there. We had a goat there. We've tended animals like this. But
we always expected we would, have critters of some sort again. It's nice to have fresh eggs. It's nice to have, that sort of thing. But we just don't. The problems that you deal with here in terms of keeping them safe, and you could do it. You could build a really, really, really secure cage and this and that and the other thing, and they could still have a decent life and all that sort of stuff. But then you have to have somebody to take care of them. I don't like automated systems because if automated systems fail in our kind of an environment, the animals die. Just the way it is. And that's a waste. That's a terrible waste.
So we could have rabbits.
Yeah.
We've hunted rabbits for years. I don't care for rabbit.
We ate too much of it.
For about 3 months, about the only meat that we had
It was rabbit.
were rabbit.
Yeah.
So
cook rabbit 27 different ways, but it still tastes like rabbit, you know.
So we could do rabbits, we could do chickens, we could do ducks, although ducks in the desert doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
No, they're not going to be. They will survive, but they will not be happy. Let me put it that way.
Now there's another way of viewing livestock, and that is if the world comes to an end. If that were to happen,
If the world comes to an end, I'll hunt wild animals. How's that?
could we raise livestock?
Oh, yeah.
The answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, I just would not want to have to deal with I would not want to. This would not be my choice location to survive in a last, environment situation, because the water is an issue here, and the climate is not getting any better. The climate is getting worse.
So there's an issue of having water to feed to the animals, and then there's also feeding them.
Yeah.
So if you have ducks or geese or chickens or any other kind of fowl like that, you have to have grains to feed them. And that means you buy them here because you can't grow it efficiently. You can't grow it effectively. It costs a boatload of money.
We looked actively into the fodder systems, and that would definitely be the most financially advantageous way to go. And in case you're not aware of fodder systems, you're basically growing micrograins for the birds to eat. You can also do it with llamas and all kinds of other critters. You can do it. In parts of Africa, they do it for the cows and stuff too, where they are in a desert area. It's possible, but you still need water. So for us, it always comes back to the baseline is water. The soil here is crap. So the ground here is really rocky. It's incredibly alkaline. If you had enough manure and enough compost, you can make it pretty decent. We used raised beds for just exactly that reason. But the bottom line is always water. I had a friend call me today and say, to ask some questions about some of the things we're going to plant this coming year. And I said, one of the reasons we decided not to do some of these things is water. I can go to, and this is not looking at end of world scenario situation. I would like to think it's not going to happen. Am I semi-prepared if it does happen? Yes. However, I'm looking at where we are right this second. I can go to Sam's Club in Flagstaff.
51 miles.
51 miles. And for less than $4, I could buy a gigantic pile. Is that 2 pounds or is it more than 2 pounds?
No, it's a 10-pound bag.
I don't think it's 10, but it's big. More than we can eat before it spoils, of carrots. Organic.
Maybe we'll freeze dry some.
Organic carrots for $4, less than $4. It's like $3.85 the last time I looked. I can't grow them for that price. And it's organic. It's not like I'm buying some crap that's been, heavily polluted with everything else. One of the reasons we're looking at things like the freeze dryer is we could freeze dry a whole stack of those carrots. Keep some of them for fresh use, but we simply cannot eat them fast enough. They spoil. But they're so cheap that you're still ahead even if you spoil some. So the theory is we want to stop spoiling some. When I get a brand new package of carrots, we want to say, okay, we're going to put half of them into the freeze dryer. And we can reconstitute them, especially in all the soups and stews that we make.
Same thing goes for onions. Part of the problem is it's just the two of us.
Yeah.
We don't throw big parties.
No.
We don't have great feasts. We used to do feasts years and years ago, but that was a different situation.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do that here. So there's a limit to the amount of food that we should or could eat.
Right.
So we're going to start doing some things freeze drying, and we'll see how that goes.
Right. From talking to people who already have freeze dryers, who are we're talking about families like one of the homesteading family on YouTube. They've got 10 children. Okay? Plus hired hands. Plus sometimes other relatives that are staying with them. So they have got a virtual army that they feed 3 meals a day plus snacks. And they have switched a lot of their freezing to freeze drying, because when it's freeze dried properly and stored properly, it's on the shelf and it's shelf stable. There are things that won't last super long on the shelf, like, say, avocados. You should probably turn those over in 2 years or less in terms of use. But most everything else is good for years and years and years, longer than you want to keep it. And the whole point is that if I go to Costco or Sam's Club or some other big box store or a farmer's market that has good selection of stuff, and I pick up a 10-pound bag of potatoes, are we going to eat that 10-pound bag of potatoes before it spoils? Heck no. We just won't. We don't eat that many potatoes. But we could freeze dry them and have them for when we want them. And if you normally either blanch or cook your potatoes before you freeze dry them, that means when it's time to actually cook something, say you decide you want mashed potatoes, you drag them out, you reconstitute them, you mash them, and heat them up, and they're ready to go.
So there's some real basic reasons why we don't do animal husbandry, as grow livestock on our homestead. Number one, we don't have reliable backup support, meaning we don't have people who can come to our place when we have to be out of town for Irene's business or for any other reason. So number one, lack of caretakers. Number two, water. A cow is going to take 50 gallons of water a day, unless you get a range cow, and that's not so much good. So water is number two. Number three is most livestock requires either the ability to graze on pasture. Yeah, we don't have any pasture. And nobody around here has pasture.
No, I mean, in some places in the world, I remember being in Holland and looking at how fat the cows were. And there was this little teeny area there with luscious grass and these big fat cows on it. And I was like, God, I forgot how fat cows can be if they're really healthy, you know? And of course, that was a beef style cow too, which means it gets fatter. But they weren't having to hand them anything other than that grass. Here you would have to either bring in hay, or when you look at cattle around here, it's acres per cow, not cows per acre, because there's not enough grazing to keep them alive. And then you still have to supplement them along with the usual salt and stuff, and water. Water. Did I mention water? I mean, it's just this. It doesn't make sense.
So that's the short form of, do we grow livestock? Why don't we grow livestock? And would we ever grow livestock? Yeah, okay, if there's no other alternative, we'd figure out what to do. As Irene says, we'd go hunting again.
Yeah. That's. So, I mean, there was a herd of 40 antelope that crossed the road in front of us the other day.
Shh! Can't shoot them.
If there's no governmental thing in place anymore, you can shoot them.
Anyway, look, thanks very much.
Well, you could legitimately hunt them by getting a license and stuff like that too.
Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, because we have a ton more going on. In fact, at the end of the show, we're going to run 3 or 4 minutes about the general process that we've gone through with the freeze dryer. So, you know what we have to say, Irene?
Yes, we have to say goodbye, and be sure to come back, because we're obviously going to be doing a ton of stuff. We have a bunch of experimentation that's going on with the freeze dryer, and there's just been all kinds of other stuff. We were lucky with the last storm. We got a dusting. Rufus has had a wonderful time splurching around out there in the snow and getting wet. But yeah, lots going on. So until next time, bye.
Keep brainstorming.
Obviously, we are.
This is going to be the first run of the Harvest Right freeze dryer for us. I have 5 trays all prepared in the kitchen. 4 of them are chicken pot pie, and the 5th one is peas. The freeze dryer starts booting up, does a bunch of tests, push the start button, and as you can hear, it's starting to cool. The freeze dryer is taking about 5 amps. The freeze dryer is taking about 5 amps during the initial cool down phase. It'll take about 15 minutes, I think, for the freeze dryer to reach the time when I'm supposed to put the food in. The freeze dryer is busy cooling the internal trays. I have 4 trays of chicken pot pie and 1 whole tray of peas that will be going with the chicken pot pies. This machine is noisy and the vacuum pump isn't even on yet. The vacuum pump is going to be a lot louder. We've been running for an hour and a half so far. Still freezing, and it'll start going through the freeze drying process in about another hour. It's tomorrow. We've been running for about 14 hours so far. The power drain has been between 600 watts and I think we ran about 12 amps, so about 1.5 kilowatts. Time to go get dressed. Freeze dryer's been working for 24 hours. Of that, I think 16 hours were the actual freeze drying process itself. The first 8 hours were freezing the food. So, going forward, what we're going to do is pre-freeze the food.